Welcome to the Lights On podcast, featuring stories behind building and running successful hotel businesses. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the Lights On podcast. I'm Kin Seo, CEO of Lights On, and your host today. I also have my co-host, Carrie Brown today, VP of Commercial Strategy at Lights On, for our special guests. On this podcast, we share stories across hospitality about building and growing hotel businesses. This episode is sponsored by Lights On. Lights On helps hotels grow revenue more consistently by managing pricing, distribution, and digital marketing together. We help hotels identify new revenue opportunities so they don't leave money on the table. We also run the full revenue and marketing operation so the team on the ground can stay focused on the guest experience. If your hotel needs more revenue growth, visit lightson.co to learn more. Our guest today, Bernard Tan. I'm so excited finally having Bernard here. He is the Chief Commercial Officer at Castle Resorts and Hotels, with properties across 5 Hawaiian islands and New Zealand. Bernard has spent 20 years of hospitality and consulting experience, and before Castle, held multiple leadership roles across revenue management and commercial strategies at companies like Aston Hotels and Resorts, Four Seasons Resorts and Lanai, and spent years doing independent hospitality consulting. And big shout out to Dan Waxman, also from Hawaii, for connecting me and Bernard to finally having the opportunity to have Bernard here today. Welcome to the show, Bernard.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah. So first question before about you. So Castle, for listeners who don't know about Castle Resorts, can you walk us through what you are managing today at Castle and what makes this portfolio different from other hotel management companies?
So Castle has been rooted in Hawaii for the last 35 years, locally operated, managed, and owned locally with 19 plus properties across portfolio hotels, condominiums, and vacation rentals in 5 major Hawaiian islands, including the island of Molokai and also New Zealand. So we operate a full set of hotels, condominiums, and also individual vacation rentals. And so those are our portfolio, and we are currently expanding and picking up our properties as we go, be it condominiums or hotel properties.
Yeah, and some of the questions today is definitely about the variety and the differences because you guys do managing very properties and type, they're very different, right? So we're going to have more questions about that. But before we get to the nitty gritty, let's talk about yourself. So starting as an accountant, that is like way different than commercial strategy and revenue management. It can be like, that, different. What made you kind of leaving that career of, in accounting and jump into hospitality?
Actually, I've always wanted to be in hospitality. So when I went to the Nanyang Technology University in Singapore, so I promised my parents that I was going to do bachelor accountancy, thinking that the school is going to open up a hospitality school in 2 years, and I'll switch. Then I was disappointed that decided not to open the program. So I left the school. It's, and NTU in Singapore was kind of highly rated, pretty much an Ivy League accountancy program, kind of hard to go in. So when I left, everybody was very shocked because I was 1 year to graduation. I walked away from the school and came to Hawaii to do travel industry management. And then I finished that in 2 years. And then after that, I say, hey, you know what? If I do just travel industry management, I really need good analytics and things like that for marketing, etc. I say, hey, why don't I just finish my accounting? So I went back to school right away and did my MBA in accounting concentration in accounting with CPA focus. So I went ahead and did my what do you call that? I did the CPA exam, and I'm not going to tell you when I passed that because that was a very long time ago. So I did pass the CPA exam, but that actually gives me the foundation in able to talk to so many different people within the business in terms of IT, accounting, finance, even lawyers and attorney. So because I took 3 semester works of contract, company, and business law in Singapore.
I see.
So I always love the hospitality industry. It's so different. It's so people centric, and it's also one of the most underappreciated and underpaid economy industry, right? So that's what I believe that we can do better in the industry.
I see. And you sounded very convicted about this industry before you went to college. Like, were there any moments growing up that made you very passionate about this industry and makes you so like, I really want to get into this industry, for college?
So before I even go into the mandatory military service in Singapore, I spent about, let me see, I spent about 3 years working in the Changi International Airport inside the transit area, working in the transit restaurant, in counter service, and also sit down dining services and servicing, business class and first class. I really like the idea of being free, right? Because you look at airplanes every day and you just have the feeling of, hey, you know what? It's kind of interesting that like not interesting, it's very inspiring to see people to be able to like, how airplanes fly and things like that, and just give you so much the idea of freedom, right? So that's to me, the freedom is one of my key things that I need freedom and I want freedom.
I see. And well, hopefully now you're just flying business class every day, just like just like how you imagined years ago.
I actually to tell you that I love the industry so much that most of my research paper, whether I'm doing English paper or whether I'm doing a business paper, it's mostly about the airline.
I see.
So I want to crack a joke. I wrote my English 120 paper on why airplanes crash.
Really?
That
Yes, I
sounds
did a
exactly
research
like
paper. I did a paper on why airplane crash. I also did research on the reorganization of Hawaiian Airline from bankruptcy, etc. So I did a lot of papers on the airline industry, but I didn't end up on an airline. But it's just kind of like it's a busy easier. But I also did my professional paper on mergers and acquisition in the hospitality industry, what kind of value it creates and things like that. That's my 100-page professional paper.
we have to dig it up and put it in the show notes so people actually see all the project that you did. Put it on my
Probably
to-do
not.
list. Cool. So kind of, from that, bring back to the more recent was through all your career of, revenue management, commercial strategy and all that. I think earlier when I knew you, one thing that you said really struck me, and I definitely want to have this opportunity to talk about it. You mentioned that revenue management nowadays is all about distribution, which I think is still in some way counterintuitive from many of the professional, right? So why don't we talk about that for a bit? And what do you mean by that?
I think, let me think about it just for 1 second. I think revenue management is not, it is about distribution, but I think distribution is only one portion of it. And I think Carrie can speak a lot to that too, because they they are not mutually exclusive. They need to coexist at the same time. And revenue management is far beyond, because people talk about revenue optimization. I mean, revenue management is the whole encompassing of everything in there. And then commercial strategy is the overall thing. And then I always talk about the 3 component of commercial strategy, and revenue management or optimization is one part of it. distribution is one part of it, and the other part is what they call digital. And a lot of people refer to digital as just I'm not sure what I'm saying is correct. This is my opinion. A lot of people refer to digital and they think about it as digital interaction with the guest, digital marketing, etc. Right, Carrie? People talk about that. I thought about digital a little bit differently too. Now we need to start to expand digital to talk about digital enablement, right? Digital enablement. So then you start to have to bring in digital technology or marketing technology and things like that. How do you adopt, embrace, and push out technology that is an enabler for you to be able to reach to the guest touch point, and what is the guest going to do with those digital enablement, right? So digital in itself is very, very huge in the whole part of the commercial strategy, right? Distribution is one part of it. How does digital going to enable your distribution to be done more frictionless, more seamless? And I mean, we talk about direct connectivity. You know, when I first interact with direct connectivity, I can tell you when. It's 2001, post September 11, November. I went to I don't know when I went to, but it's somewhere in New York City. And then they were having some kind of show. And that was then they talk about direct connectivity. Can you imagine after 24, 25 years later? And we're still talking about direct connectivity. It's almost 1/4 of a century. And our hospitality world is still dealing with direct connectivity. Where are the pharmaceutical and the banking and all those industry? They are way far went beyond that part of the world, right? So the whole digital enablement is a critical part of revenue management and commercial strategy. So it's the part where people talk about, hey, what do I need to do? I mean, it's no longer just selling this channel, not sell this channel, adjusting rates and things like that. There is so much distribution, there's so much complexity in the B2B world, the B2C world, the B2B world. And with the recent explosion of AI, right? People everywhere we go is everybody say, hey, AI this, AI that. And what do you mean by that, right? I have to ask the vendor, what do you mean by AI, right? In your world, what does AI means? It's like, what does that mean? What are you driving to, right? And and Kin and I has a very spirited discourse on AI. So, and I'm more like always critical about adoption and pushing things out because there's always you know how in Chinese, I'm going to use a Chinese idiom, right? It's like the thunder, the lightnings are huge, but the raindrops are very minimal, very small.
Yep.
Think about in the past on how voice recognition, voice technology was supposed to fly, right? Fly off the shelf. But Carrie, did it actually fly off the shelf?
Absolutely not.
No. So right now, I think we're in the explosion stage of AI. And I do believe that there's a lot of consolidation going on. And also we have to think about the workflow and also the value creation within our process in commercial technology. What is it that we can achieve efficiency that the AI can do? And what is it that we need human instinct and human interaction to be able to do? So revenue management has evolved into such a part that, with start shouting out the HSMAI, right? HSMAI has the CRME certification and also the digital certification and things like that. So I'm wondering whether the CRME and the digital certification maybe need to be revamped within a few years to say, hey, really, revenue management is really not about revenue management anymore. And how do you take all those different components together, right? I mean, I can give you an idea to say, hey, is there such a thing as exclusivity anymore to any supplier? I mean, to any intermediary party? I mean, it's like, so what do we need to do as hotel supplier or accommodation supplier, right? Can I really give something to someone that is truly exclusive? I beg to differ. I don't think that ever existed anymore. So what do I do with distribution partner 1 and 2? How do I work with them, making sure everything is on the same platform. And I do want to mention something which I'm very passionate about right now is the whole thing about rate parity. So the distribution partners always hold us to rate parity. But I also want to remind everybody, rate parity is really about sell rate parity, the sell rate parity. But what we're really missing is there hasn't been a net rate parity, right? We can't hold any other partner in compliance of the net rate parity set because they can, hey, I decide not to make that 15%. I'm going to make 10%. Then we lose our pricing control at 5%. And when something happened like that, it disrupted the whole equilibrium in parity. And right now, I believe this is what a lot of hoteliers are facing right now because of the different preferential pricing that exists in the distribution world. And there's so many onward distribution and B2B relationship that it's almost impossible to put the responsibility on supplier. I think not to say that we are kind of like innocent, but it just opens out the whole new can of worms, in my view.
Agreed. I question Bernard, actually, as we talk about the complexity of the commercial landscape and, B2B and parity, and do you think that the job description of a revenue manager is going to evolve with all of these new things that a revenue manager, a revenue director is now, being asked to take into consideration as part of their job?
I think what we have been actively trying to recruit and trying to train. Okay, first, I'm going to say the school does not prepare a student
Agreed.
in place for a revenue management role or even the hospitality world, right? Everybody thinks about, hey, we have this nice job, cushy job, right? We get fly from one place to another place and then, work for nice hotels and things like that. But in reality, that's really not the case. We kind of like look into, Harry, you know this really well, right? I mean, forecast, bi-weekly forecast, and then you slouch through and get the numbers, etc. It's not like everybody say, hey, press a button, the forecast just shows us by itself, right?
Right.
But it doesn't work that way. And then because there's always some human elements, there's always something that the knowledge that the data only give you so much. So I think in terms of how really what I'm looking for is I'm really looking for commercial performance optimization person. It's no longer a revenue manager. I mean, I'm kind of like going to post a new job. I'm still writing it out. It's really a commercial performance optimization. Someone that can focus on how do I optimize the commercial performance on assigned property. And what does that mean? That means that not just third party, but direct businesses, and then covers the component of the different part. And I know I'm not going to get the person that's going to check through everything. But if I get someone kind of have good revenue management experience, understand what digital is, and have a good understanding of distribution, then we can train the person and we can bring out the person. And I believe that HSMAI is trying to do in the direction with whatever they need to do. But internally, I hope the local HSMAI can focus a lot more on like having, I know it's like you're taking this, I call it the donut, right? The donut, the middle is really the power, but the three portion. Maybe do a series of 3 separate workshops to talk about what does distribution mean, what does revenue management mean, and what does digital means in those areas, and have expertise, and then maybe do a series of workshops like that, and then do a bundle discount. If you register for 3, you have a good discount and a separate one of those. I think those are the things that people would like to do. It's not about trying to train them on skill sets or things like that, but it's trying to have a deeper understanding. And then I would also encourage the local industry to extend those workshops to maybe even just the hotel partners willing to sponsor high school students or even willing to sponsor university students that's willing to attend those kind of shops, so that we have a continuing stream of university graduates. Like Carrie, you know what I mean, right? Right now, so it's having that the student. We're not trying to we're going to try to at least mentally prepare them what's coming into the industry, right? I know I usually talk a lot, but that's what I am very passionate about, is educating the next generation.
Yeah. And, this is the part where, the revenue management and optimization professionals, always are going to the bigger corporations, right? So for listeners out there, because we have a lot, they're more like the smaller owner operators, hoteliers type, where, they don't grow up in the industry knowing what distribution and revenue optimization really mean in the context of hotels. So, if I were to draw an analogy, it's like somebody making really tasty ice cream, right? I think this is where people trying to make the best experience. Ice cream makers, they want people to taste the ice cream. They believe that they make the best ice cream in the world. So now you have the product, you have the ice cream. Now, how are you thinking about selling the ice cream to consumers, right? Obviously, you can start your own ice cream stand, ice cream store, right? Most people start with that. That's kind of like the direct channel when thinking about hotel booking directly in the website. And over time, if you want more reach, now you start have to thinking about, oh, how can I get my ice creams, get them sold in a local Target, Costco, Walmart, just all these different grocery stores, right? That's really kind of thinking about that distribution, orthogonal to the hotel industry. When you start selling your room and inventory and experience through different, OTA channels, like Expedia's, Booking.com, your direct website, groups, and things like that. So it's kind of like that, where now when you have more different storefronts and distribution network to sell your same product, now that gets to different pricing, different margin, the differences between the where you sell, depending on when and what. And hey, ice cream being very seasonal, right? So selling ice cream winter versus summer, now you might think about how pricing would be different, because people tend to eat more ice cream during summertime. So this is kind of like how all the revenue and distribution professionals in hotel thinking is about, like, ways to like distribute, honestly, like, the hotel experience, the rooms, to a fast, complex network of distributions through, different partners and websites and whatnot.
One of my Cornell homework, that was a long time ago. Cornell homework was, have we ever thought about, this is revenue management to the max, right? Think about a soft drinks vending machine, right, Carrie? Think about soft drinks vending machine. Till the beginning till now, it hasn't really adopted the revenue management technology, right? It's the pricing differential only differ because based on whether it's a la Moana or whether it was something else here, right? So it's only, but yeah, but hasn't it even considered what is the current outside temperature? As the temperature goes up, the cost of that Coke should goes up too. If the temperature drops, I mean, I'm just oversimplifying thing, right? The urge of people, right? But since 20 years ago, I took that class and had that homework question. Really hasn't. But why is it not being pushed out? Because there is no willingness for the supplier and to push in that direction, because they haven't ascertained that there's incremental revenue they get from there. But there's also the elasticity on the consumer, and it's going to be more of like the guest that is going to be price discriminated. It's going to feel like much more taken advantage of, right? Versus an airline seats, versus a hotel, versus car rental. We all take that as normal based on seasonality and things like that. But certain things that you don't see so this is another thing that I was looking at. Sorry, I'm just going off topic. But if you think about why the supermarket went from and Hawaii is really behind. Okay, I'm going to give you Hawaii is really behind. But in most Asia places I've been to, all the price tagging about what the groceries and what the items in the supermarket stores are no longer hard coded. They are all electronic display. So you can adjust your pricing almost in an instant rather than having to use the printout tag. Say Hawaii, the printout tag, right? But that's also, they can actually also really respond to changes in demand really quickly, because based on supply and demand. So, but where are we in terms of the hospitality industry, in terms of that? I mean, if you look at my, if you have the opportunity to do, it's not that we're lack of innovation. Our biggest problem is really integration. So many things. I mean, let's talk about just independent hotel, independent properties, right? The big brands, so much easier. A lot of things are much more easier. It's not that it's easier for them, but in a hotel, in the independent world, we have to fight a lot of things. We have to make sure things are, but listen to this uh, uh, phrase, and it's almost nobody even talk about it right now, right? It's called single image inventory, right? Back in those days, single image inventory. And then for me, it's just like, hey, we just decided what's the latest talk of the town where the wind blows, right? So many theories there was parity. Parity is too big. But nobody talk about single image inventory anymore because it almost never existed in my life. In the independent hotel, like almost never existed. I mean, so it was like it's a nirvana stage that you want to have single image inventory because our distribution system is so complex now and it's so fragmented.
Yeah.
That we have to decide. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's say, I mean, you say a real life example talking about the messiness of the distribution and the technology, right? Because when you arrived at Castle, right? I think from our past conversation, but I understand it's like your first task really is to map out, 19 plus properties, all different technologies. They're not talking to each other. There's we can even call it ecosystem because there's no connection between all of these at all, right? So just talking about we are kind of lots of theory just now, but now kind of getting into the task at hand when you arrive at Castle. What did that look like? When you first came in, what did you find, and what's your thought process of essentially fixing that to be closer to the nirvana state that you just mentioned?
I think I would want to maybe correct something that you said. I don't think it's so the first thing that I did after 90 days in a company was, hey, you know what, let's put together an ecosystem. Look at the whole ever tech stack, the ecosystem. I don't think that the system is not talking to one another, but I don't believe that's the right statement to make. I think the right statement to make is there's some complexity in the ecosystem. It may be not the most efficient, right? So the way that we're looking at it is how do we look at it? How do we digest in that whole ecosystem? I think Castle has always been very well known for the ability to manage complexity, kind of maneuvering around different property management system, central reservation system, distribution system, different form of type of reservation. I mean, I know Castle is well known for the ability to move into hotel system, condominium system, VR system, and making sure that both system coexist to be able to distribute type level availability and also individual key level availability, right? That in itself, to me, is a very complex aggregation and distribution system. If you look into the world of technology in the hospitality side, on the hotel system side, almost no system can do it. I know of one system, but is that what we only have one choice? But then if you look at vacation rental, a lot of system can do it in the key level, but they're very clunky or clumsy when you try to aggregate them and do it on a type level, right? So really depending on what you want to do and things like that. So Castle has always been taking the pioneer stage in trying to say, hey, how do we better manage those? And we're still learning as we go for the last decade or so, and we're perfecting the each and every steps as we go about. So we're trying to say, hey, you know what? What's our return on investment doing it this way? What are we doing it this way? I think at this junction, revenue management, and I'm not trying to make things complicated. I'm circling back to revenue management and commercial strategy, etc. With the advent of AI right now, it's really going back and taking guests as the guest centricity, right? It's going down to the guest touch point. So AI has collapsed the amount of guest touch point from the initial inspiration to search to whatsoever, maybe collapse it to a single step and then Ken can talk to it, right? He will write to Claude to say, hey, I want to go on family vacation, blah, 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 blah. And then it's going to come back with giving you the option. So can you imagine like all those so many stages has been collapsed into one, right? And then at that junction, how does AI decide what to show to the guest, the customer at that point? And then so it's no longer a one-dimensional or two-dimensional look to say, I just need to make sure that my schema data is correct, my this is correct, my that is correct. So it's become a very multifaceted, multi-dimensional search in a way that you need to make sure that, and I want to reference to Carrie know this really well back in the OTA days. Sorry, Carrie, but in a way that they talk about content is king, right?
Yes.
But the content right now really evolves to all those interaction, the messaging, the real content, the video content, the review content, the ratings content, the photos content. There's so many things right now, right? So I wish someone would come up with a technology, and Kin, I'm looking towards you, that can help us to manage everything in one sitting.
We can definitely talk about that offline. But easier said than done, but like, I think there are ways, to your point, right? In the final state, I think to me, everything is a spectrum, right? Anything that we can inch forward closer to the goal, right? It is a benefits, right? So not necessarily a binary thing, like, it's a 0 to 1 tomorrow, you're going to get to that state or not. But I think there are many steps along the way. To your point, complexity, right? I think like, when we find ways to break down the complexity and trying to solve that one by one, right? There are ways to gain efficiencies and productivity through that process.
So ultimately, who has the power? That's my question now, right? With the AI world, right? Who has the power to put in front of what the guest is seeing? Because on the OTA side, they have different factors that measure visibility, right? All the different factors and offer strength, right? In this particular situation, is the AI even considering the offer strength, or is it just its price? Is that a pricing thing? I mean, who is the one ultimately deciding what is going to be presented to the guest? Who write that script? Who define that this is I know the answer is to start with a G, but so and that where it was at that junction, right? So nothing is free. I'm gonna to tell everybody, it's really like whoever can monetize the whole AI process is going to be the one that's going to be charging everybody an arm and a leg within the next year or two. So then we're no longer, the whole PPC, search engine marketing, etc. What is it going to become? It's just not, AI is not going to be free. I guarantee you, AI search, etc. is not going to be free. Whatever we are investing in meta search, whatever we're investing in search engine, it's just going to get invested into another channel.
Yeah.
Recent case studies, right? We are now pushing, and from our clientele, we talk a lot about the AI, chatbot answer engines optimizations as a layer on top of the traditional search engine optimization. There are overlaps, but there are new techniques and ways that we have to adapt so that the nirvana goal is always when somebody going to an AI chatbot asking for trip planning, we hope that our clients will show up, to those results. It's still a black box right now. That's not to a point where we will have all these proven best practices like the SEO days, because that's been a practice for the last 2 decades. Versus now AI is still week over week. There are just so many new changes that people we are still spending lots of time doing research and development and trying to find the best way. But it's a huge cost not to take actions. There's no one right answer to what is going to get you for certain, being the top result by, the AI answer. But if, anyone is not doing anything right now, certainly they're going to be left behind.
Yeah. And sometimes I wonder about the research, right? I started off in the research world too, King, just so you know.
Yeah.
My initial 1 to 2 years, I did a lot of research on numbers, etc. But I wonder when they report so much percentage of people is using AI or whatever to do for travel search, etc. I I like to look into those a little bit more to say, how valid are those research and what findings are those based on, right? Because they say the same thing about voice back then, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if
Um,
you tell me that 40% are using AI to search for this and that, I mean, I just like I don't know.
Actually, just borrowing a case studies, from other industries, Alexa, for Amazon, right? I think there
Yeah.
was a big premise that Amazon was pushing big on the voice first search, thinking that
Yeah.
when you put an Alexa into everybody's home, people will going to be start shopping and actually submitting orders through the voice experience, which in reality is a flop, right? People still have that stigma or the hesitancy to like place the final orders through that. They might be using that for discovery, which we all know all consumers right now are using AI as a way to discover, as a way to plan out their trips. I don't think consumers are ready at this level yet where they are willing to have AI to also make the final purchase decision. So I think there's still I don't know if it's going to be like a forever time frame, but I think there's still a time frame where the ultimate purchase decision, like consumers still like to hold that onto their hand and actually do that transaction, whether it's going to be OTAs, whether it's going to be direct websites. I think consumers still taking that result from the AI research to make a decision, which I think extrapolate that for other anything we do with AI, this is still the coexist model where how can somebody use AI to best facilitate a decision making, right? I think human beings still needs to be put in the driver's seat to do that decision making process, right? We call it the human in the loop.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a moment in time, just with how things are moving, like what I just said, it might be invalid, 3, 6, 9 months from now. So depending on when this episode comes out, something may have changed already.
No, the thing I'm thinking about is I think the findings are not really based on generation. We have to understand the consumer for travel because we always assume everybody wants everything quick and fast, right? Everybody wants everything quick and fast, but I'm always the gut check and the conscious check, right? Because I do think that some people actually enjoy the process of discovery to really see for themselves. Because once you get to the point of everything is all AI centric, then it ended up is everybody going to end up going to the same place to visit just because they think and move alike to a certain extent? Do you know what I'm saying? It's like we're starting to treat everybody as a vanilla color, right? Vanilla thing. And then it start to think about a lot of I'm going to Hollywood now. A lot of the movies that were making in the past really do come true. So when AI came to a point where so is everybody actually looking the same? Is AI going to automatically recommend almost the same thing to? Because there's a lot of. It really depends on what you put in, right? It really depends on what you put in, things like that. But the research that's happening right now wasn't. Maybe I haven't read one. Wasn't really targeted. And what's the difference? How is Gen Z, Gen Y, Gen X, and even the Boomer generation embracing AI?
Yeah. Um, well, actually, I'm going to do a shout out to one of my favorite podcasts, the best one yet. Kind of linking back to what you just mentioned back in the day, people said content is king. So that podcast that I just mentioned, they kind of coined this phrase, content is king, but curation is queen. I think talking about discovery is definitely something that consumer enjoy because this is how they dreamed about the next vacation and how they think about the experience. I think the process itself is an enjoyment. So I think what AI is going to change, similar to how Google the search engine changed how people through that discovery process, right? I think AI will have their way and algorithm to present and curate things that you think about to plan your vacation. I don't think that is a mutual exclusive from replacing the process itself. I think it's just going to be changing how consumer discover and how they use that process getting to the final purchase decision of the experience or the trip or the vacation.
Yeah, I'm not disputing it, but just, I'm way older than you are, Ken. So I'm just gonna tell you over the years, like Carrie is way younger than I am,
I
but
am not.
she can hear about all these things because remember back in those days about how the explosion of internet booking, the OTAs, etc. They talk about the travel advisor is going to be right gone, but
Yeah.
they didn't really go away. They evolved into something else that which is much more service oriented, right? And then they talk about, hey, voice channel, etc. A lot of the call centers, not definitely not as much as it used to be, but they also have evolved into. But if you look at transactional pricing, you look at transactional productivity, the average booking value, it's going to be way higher with a call existed booking versus an online booking. Right. That's my experience with. So a lot of prediction that say, hey, this is going to replace this is going to say hasn't exactly. I'm not saying they fall flat, but it hasn't exactly came out to what they say, and some actually fall flat, like voice itself, right? So I'm always, I'm not, I'm not trying to be cynical. I like how they're embracing our AI. I just think that we need to think about what is the value creation in their process rather than talking about what is it going to replace, right? Because every time it's something come on you, oh yeah, this is going to replace this, things like that. But to me is what in this whole booking process, how does it enhance the whole option choices and decision making? I almost do not hear, this is my limited reading, I almost do not hear people talking about it. It's all about replacement. It's all about replacement. Back in those days, oh, direct connectivity comes on. We don't have so many reservation people. Come on, there's always synchronization error. You spend more time resolving things along the way. So it's really the efficiency is the key, but nobody talk about efficiency with AI on what does it enhance. It's all about replacement, and I don't think that that's the right approach to take.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about human, right? Because it's not just AI. I think, especially in the world of hospitality right now, we talk a lot about integration, innovations, moving systems. I think you through Castle, you also, going through introducing new vendors, new technologies, swapping PMS and things like that. So, AI or not, I think like, that technology side of things is gonna happen, it's gonna change, it's gonna transform. And to your point, many times it's not about replacing human being, but human needs to be part of the journey as part of that transformation. And doing that in the size of Castle, because I think for Castle, you guys have what, 500-600 plus employees working in different properties or interacting with systems of different forms. So how do you think about bringing the team along with that journey of transformation?
Can I give you one example? Because I travel quite a bit, King can allude to that. So can you really imagine as a guest traveler, we start, I don't even want to talk about the booking process because I almost book everything from my phone and not on it, not on desktop anymore. But if you imagine that when you start checking in, you do from a mobile phone, you check in, you never interacted with any of the airport desk people. You go to TSA. Can you imagine that TSA officer is no longer there? You just use your facial recognition, etc., right? Because they know that you have a flight because all your information shared with them. Can you also imagine you walk through security, not having a single security officer there, but you just go through a gate, they scan you or they didn't scan you, you go through that. And you will get to boarding, you got to boarding for the flight, you do not see a gate agent, right? They just see your face, you scan it, the gates open, you board the plane and then do all the way down there. By the time you get to the hotel, you haven't interact with a single person except the flight attendant, right? Just at worst, because they can never be replaced unless robot goes on the plane. But the time you get to the hotel, do you really want to go through a mobile check-in for a lot of people that's go on vacation that you just not to say not sometimes I prefer not to see anybody on the check-in process, right? You just scan and mobile check-in, get your key on the car and things like that. That to me is a world devoid of emotion and relationship, right? So does I'm not talking about airline, I'm not talking about AB, but I'm talking about us in the hotel industry. Do we want to take away those human touch experience from people truthfully? Right?
Probably not.
Right? If you imagine, we're only at the receiving end when they come and check in, right? But you think about all the steps beforehand. We haven't talked to a single person except the flight attendant or the flight mate. So what we need to be cognizant of two things, right? I think the first thing is we need to develop empathy in the industry because a lot of things can happen before they set foot at a hotel. They could have a bad time on the plane. They could have flight delay and this weather situation. And then the first thing is really we need to train a high value that's about empathy, right? And then the second thing is it's about what is it that I can make, what is it that I can do for you that make today a great day? And that is being customer centric first. Then you talk about the technology about how can I do it better? Having that first human interaction, helping them to check in, etc., things like that. That would be help. And then automatically, this is what I noticed change in the hotel industry, not necessarily here I see it from the mainland, where I used to receive a phone call from the front desk or the guest service today, how your trip is, has been replaced by a text messages. Is that, I mean, I don't dispute with it, but then at that stage, what are we really introducing? I mean, we are making every interaction a commodity at this junction. So how do we distinguish our property from another property if we don't focus on the guest experiences from the point they arrive to the point that they leave? I understand we need to embrace technology. Don't get me wrong. There's a guest engagement system. It makes it more efficient. But I think we also need to think back, how do we infuse the human touch point to it? And that's something that I don't hear people talking about it. Right, Carrie? It's
It should be talked about more. I think, you
yeah.
know, we're, in a lot of ways, especially with the revenue management side of things, we're very numbers focused, but at the end of the day, this is about hospitality. It's about the guest, and it's about really making people feel special, especially in a destination like Hawaii. Like this is such an incredibly special place,
Yeah.
and that personal touch is something that really delivers an experience that's above and beyond what somebody's able to offer and in Iowa or in Michigan or in different places. This is something special that's really central to Hawaii and the culture, and it really should provide that foundational element of how we build out the rest of the things that make a hotel run and make the industry run, for sure.
Yeah, something else that I believe the big brand might be doing it, but I'm not definitely I'm not 100% sure, and maybe you guys can take a look at your property that you guys are doing it and things like that. I just noticed that on the hotel side, on the accommodation side, we focus so much on the property that sometimes we forget about the destination. We feel like the destination is an HVCV or HTA situation. But to me is how do we infuse the destination into the property? You can go to this is what I do on my mobile app, right? I search for properties that I'm going to. Mostly city because Hawaii, I need to my energizer, I need to get recharged. So I need to go to like Tokyo, New York, or Hong Kong to get the energy back. But I noticed that most of the photo gallery focus on the property, the facilities, etc. It almost does not have the folder about the destination. So are we doing a disservice in trying to sell the property and not the destination? We're not staying 24 hours at the property. At most, we're staying 10 to 12. The other 12 hours is really our interaction with the destination. So what I'm really looking into it really for the next 1 to 2 years is how do I infuse the destination into my property?
Mm.
Because those messages are mutually exclusive, right? The destination and the property, but they
Yeah.
have to be integrated into one another. and that's how you amplify a message like that so effectively.
Yeah. So if you really go and look at a brand, sorry, I'm not going to call any other brand because they're not my business, but look at independent property, look at the brand, look at how many people actually talk about the destination.
Yeah.
It's actually a really good point because I think from everything that we've seen so far, yeah, it's tend to be something overlooked. I think for the reasons where getting in the game, I think everyone can be so competitive, especially now market in Hawaii when you have that many hotels staying in the same destination. I think people start thinking about the differentiation factor. How is my property different from my competitor? And I think the sole focus is on that, which I think, but now what you mentioned, kind of bringing people back to the first principle, right? People go to travel for a destination, like they pick Hawaii first, not necessarily they're going to this particular hotel, that hotel, right? There are cases like that where the property has experience that draws people to it, but for the most part, people first of all think about this is where I want to go. Then they start thinking about the planned experience, where I'm gonna stay and all that. So I think it's actually probably like the thought of the day. Yeah. So
I think we think about Hawaii, it's not 100% repeat guests. Where US West centric, a lot of them are high repeat. But they would also like to know, what does a destination have to offer? Not just for the repeat guests, right? But for new guests from further out and things like that. I think, overall as a destination, I mean, HGCV promotes Hawaii fairly well, but then on the hotel side, we just focus on, yes, we should promote the hotel, but we should figure out within the whole ecosystem, where do we sit, right? Yeah, go ahead, Ken, sorry.
yeah. No worries. So since we are talking about brand, I think it's such a good segue into something that Capsule recently did, where you think the portfolio, two of your properties,
Yeah.
we affiliated with Wyndham's the soft brand, the trademark collection. So how did you decide what properties needed a brand, whether it's a sub brand or not, right? Then which are better off without having a brand?
I think primarily you have to look at it in terms of the branded world, right? I mean, how many brands does Marriott has? Has anybody kept count?
I
38?
lost
Not some
count.
30 plus.
38. I mean, what's the difference between this particular brand or that particular brand? If you go to the mainland, a Fairfield Inn is always next to a Residence Inn, right? Or something like that. So that's the value proposition. So the way where we look at soft brands, and soft brands is fairly, I shouldn't say recent, but it's something that it is when you get to a whole maturity in the regular branding. That's how the hotel brand starts to say, hey, you know what? There is probably some areas they can go into. That's why they create this so-called soft brands that allows you to retain your identity, allows you to retain your control. So that's where we kind of like look into it. Is, hey, we really don't want to lose the identity of the two properties that we are thinking about soft branding. But then we also look at, in the marketplace, who does not have a presence here, who does not have a presence here. So it doesn't make sense to soft brand somebody under Hilton, Marriott, Hyatt, also, because there's really so much. There's also some branding guidelines that, in terms of vicinity, radius, etc. So Wyndham Trademark is a mutual, the needs of both party between, us and them, and say, hey, maybe Trademark might be a good fit for the Hilo Hawaiian and the ISO, because we have access to their global distribution ecosystem. They're very well connected in all those in that distribution landscape. We fall within the brand guidelines and the brand guardrail without losing the identity. As you know, soft brand itself, that we still retain the management, we still retain a big part of some of the sales and marketing and distribution, even though we're relying on their distribution program. So we look at it to say, hey, those are kind of like good thing, and they also have a good uh good I'm trying to figure out what the right word to use, but they have a good solid base of membership. Wyndham member, So there's different ways you can promote to them, and there's different kind of marketing partnerships and programs to the Wyndham member. So that's what we see as and I recently run a analysis in terms of it's not just particular one set of members, but different tiers of member that could revisit a property. So how do we choose which one to be? We look into their footprint. We look into their footprint. They generally don't have Hawaii in general, except for some of their timeshare. But then you think about leisure destination. Waikiki itself is kind of like quite congested at this point. Doesn't mean that we are not potentially would have another Wyndham Saw brand here and things like that. But when you think about places to start and test, Kauai hotel property would be a good fit. Ilo Hawaiian in the Big Island will probably be a good fit too at that junction. So those are the really good pilot properties to test it out and things like that. So right now, it seems to me by initial analysis for the first maybe 7 months, it does looks like it drives good incremental revenue coming from the Wyndham ecosystem.
Huh. So I guess Bernard, as we're talking about independent versus brand, especially soft brands, for the properties that you've chosen to stay, I guess, independent, what sort of distribution levers replaced what the brand would have offered you, I guess, in those different ways?
Sorry, what you're saying so what is the soft brand replacing under
I
distribution?
guess, the brand does offer a lot of distribution levers, some of the sales and marketing, some of the membership levers that you're able to pull.
Correct.
How do you work to kind of bridge that gap with the independence then that you have? How do you kind of bulk up the independence to compete with that?
So you're saying that how we're going to work with our current independent properties,
Yes,
etc., and things like
correct.
that. I think it's also taking the best practices that we're gleaning from our relationship with Wyndham Trademark. We say, hey, they're doing things this way, and we're doing things this way. Is this better for us to do it either way, or what makes sense? So that's kind of learning the best practices for them. At the same time, like looking from the brand perspective, right? This is how they're running their revenue management. This is how they're running their distribution. Really, really different because they have a global workforce. They have a global this and that. So definitely we can't compete with that on the global workforce, etc. But what we can do is with the branding of the property, and because the property still exists under the castle, not a brand, but castle portfolio. So that raises the overall awareness of the castle brand and also the castle stuff and the property. So in itself that they market Wyndham will continue to market Hilo Hawaiian ISO under the trademark. We could also market those properties under our digital e-blast, our email marketing, database marketing. At the same time, having the brand under our portfolio also instill the confidence of the guests on the rest of the properties that we manage, and also instill confidence on the other owners on how we manage them, right? I mean, how we manage them is about, hey, we have leadership position, we have good partnership with people in the industry, we are able to manage complexity with multiple system, with brand and non-branded system. There might be different things we can do. There's speed, execution, action, and things that we do. So we showcase ourselves to be able to manage a very small size property to a big size property, working with independent, working with brand. So that's just kind of like give us a different talking point about who we truly are in Castle.
The strength of diversity,
Yeah.
for sure.
I see. So thinking about introducing a brand into the portfolio, right? Obviously, a big part is about the incremental revenues brought by, making that decision. How does that introduce additional complexity to the ecosystem in terms of the technology stack? Because obviously, when you start adopting a brand, whether it's a hot brand or soft brand, it comes with, my guess would be additional technology, whether you have to swap a PMS, you have to run parallel systems to some extent. How did you handle that transformation as well?
So, Tin, you saw my ever expanding diagram that I shown it to you before. So I moved them on one side. And then this is a very rudimentary, Carrie, don't laugh. I use Excel because I'm an Excel person. I do everything by columns and rows. I do everything by columns and rows. And then all my rows are all the touch point, the PMS, the CRS, the booking engine, etc. So we'll kind of identify the technology and then break it out. So then we look at it as, hey, start from not just the voice, but from the website, the web existence, right? There's a brand.com, which is the Wyndham, which is a wyndhambrand.com, the Wyndham brand, the trademark where the property existed. On castleresorts.com, this is where our property existed on our castlebrand.com. And then the property has its own standalone website, right? So then we need to understand on each website, what kind of booking capability each one is using. So with the Wyndham trademark brand and our stuff, so Wyndham was very flexible enough to allow us to build out from the same central reservation system 2 separate booking engines that looks different.
Wow.
So that's quite a bit of work too. So one aligned with the trademark brand, and the other one aligned with the standalone website that has its own property branding. So the look and feel, etc., things like that, and also infused within the standalone website. And then the selection of what shows up and things like that was a little bit different from the brand.com. They were nice enough to, I would say they were very accommodating to our needs to say what we think is important. Because think about, and I need to shout out the Wyndham Trademark did a really good job in helping us to get to the point where I just happen to know the person that I was working with on this, and he's based in London. So forgot his last name. Sorry, Adrian. Yeah, it was Adrian. Yes, Adrian. So he's based in London. So he and I have a mutual friend from Singapore, 20 plus years. So that kind of helps the whole relationship, and things was very fruitful. So we're able to prioritize, and we were able to even allow Kamina local residents rate to show up on the search, even on their brand.com site and on a standalone. Usually they don't allow, right? Things like that. So I have to but I pull up the data and I show it to them on all the things and how much money we would potentially be losing if we don't make things easy for our guests. So that's one. And then personalization, and also agents' involvement in trying to make sure that what looks good on our site. Because he doesn't manage he's just really assisted me to customize the booking engine to look and feel like the standalone. So then there's still an identity. That's the nice thing about soft brands. So the identity. So we use the same thing for the ISO property, but not only that, we also retain the whole digital marketing for the property. So you have to think about, we have to balance that, right? The brand.com, trademark, and then versus us. So we maintain the retargeting, we maintain the paid search, we maintain the meta search, we maintain our own site. So we're driving everything to our site, to our standalone site. We're driving everything to Castle, to our site. So we're able to isolate how much of the web revenue is coming from Wyndham Trademark, the transactional channel versus our channel. Definitely there's a lift because of the name brand itself, things like that. But that's kind of hard to quantify, but we're trying to find different areas to make those kind of measurements. And my job is to make sure that those measurements comes out on a QBR, right? Quarterly business review, to say, hey, how much revenue are we driving from our standalone? And I can tell you that with the support of Wyndham Trademark, the property is actually doing pretty well on the digital side in terms of ROI, the ROI that we're seeing for the overall investment in digital is quite revealing.
I see. That's thinking about the making the selection of not just brand, but I think in general, like, and this is kind of getting to the last question for you, thinking about our listeners who are independent hotel owner operators. It might be they own a small portfolio, 2, 3 hotels coming in, right? I think even for that, a much simpler scenario, these hotel owners and operators could still be facing many options where you think about, oh, there are now all these brand and sub brand they can choose from, technology decisions, all the different components they can choose from. And in reality, it's like everybody have a pretty messy technology stack as well. So if a person like that coming to you for an advice, okay, now I have a messy technology stack and I want to find a way to optimize it for, that get me the optimal revenue strategy and distribution. What would you tell this person to first look at?
Come to me.
Yeah. Yes.
Call Patrick at Castle Resorts and Hotels. Yeah, my platform myself, just look up Castle Resorts and Hotels and call and look for Patrick, and then he will kind of walk through me, and then so no, that's not really joking aside. That's really applied. So if an independent is looking for some kind of third party management things like that, they are more than welcome. They are very encouraged to call us, and we can take an initial assessment and dissecting things. And this is really true because I'm currently existing one developer in mapping these things out. It's a much more tedious process, right? You're going through exactly what technology, what engagement you want to do, rather than say, hey, just sign up with this brand or things like that. Sometimes you really don't have to go to the brand route. Really depends on exactly what you're looking for and how much inventory are you moving in what location, right? So brand is not for everybody. Soft brand will work. However, you need to take into consideration where you are in your life stage of your property, right? So, and things like that. And if someone has been operating independent, I mean, we have very successful examples about, Napili Surf Beach Resort that was independent for 40 something years. And they came onto the Castle portfolio in 2024 January. And this coming year, 2026, this is our that year. They will probably have the best year in their whole entire 40 plus years of history this year. So it's not to say you have to go to a brand, but Castle is a regional powerhouse in Hawaii that we can help people to take a look at it. How do we diversify distribution? How do we spread the market share? How do we increase the guest repeat ratio? So that's what we are proficient in doing. So yes, what do I tell them, right? Look for someone that's familiar. No, look for someone that's familiar in the industry. Look for someone that's familiar in the distribution world. Look for someone that is familiar with the technology part, right? Carrie, right? It's not revenue matching, it's not important, but you need someone that knows the whole commercial spectrum.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you need someone. So I believe there are good companies around. Lightsound is a good example, right? Lightsound is a good example. If someone wasn't sure exactly what they need to do, and then they can look for Lightsound, company like Lightsound, company like Castle, company like don't know who else is out there. I know who else out there, but I'm just going to shout out Lightsound and us now.
Thank
So
you.
so at least we look at it to say, hey, this is what we can do, and then like we'll tell you what is feasible, what's possible. It's not about, it's beyond top line and expenses. It's really about profit maximization. So that's all I can say.
All right. Thank you very much, Bernard. Listeners, we've been talking to Bernard Tan, the Chief Commercial Officer at Castle Resorts and Hotel. Bernard, where can people learn more about you?
CastleResorts.com for the property, or you can look him out in LinkedIn.
Awesome. We will make sure to put those links in our show notes. Best salesperson for your company as well, Bernard. Thank you very much for joining us today. Always a pleasure talking to you, Bernard.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you, Bernard.
All right, signing off.
Thanks for listening to the Lights On podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.